What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kenahan, and today we've got a lot to talk about once more with the Commanders and Jets having their joint practice earlier today. And also, we are joined by the one and the only George Carmi. Welcome back to the show.
Mason, what's up, my guy, man? It's good to hear from you. We always keep in touch. I think we've done the show 3 or 4 times together, and we do this annually during training camp time. So I'm glad to be back, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. We've got a lot to talk about, not only just because of the practice today, but just throughout training camp in general. Some of the bigger takeaways that you've seen and I've seen throughout training camp so far. But first, I kind of do want to talk about the practice today that happened. So we'll jump in some of the early pre-practice storylines because heading into this practice, there was a lot going on. I felt like there was the rain. Was this practice actually going to happen? And then ultimately finding out Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be practicing. There was a lot of talk.
Yeah, a lot of drama going into this training camp. This joint practice we've all been looking forward to. The actually training camp ended a little early, started back up again, was going back and forth. Definitely very interesting. But as you mentioned, this was big for us. We've been hearing a lot of good things about Washington and Ashburn and how they've been looking against each other. It was very interesting to see how they would do against another opponent. So, we could talk about that whenever you're ready.
So jumping into the actual practice now, we had a few major things. Like, I want to save one guy for the next topic because this one guy had a lot of talk. But before we get to him, it sounded like I put some notes. We'll start with the offense. The offensive line has been a big storyline just throughout the week in terms of injuries and who will be available for not only this practice, but for the game upcoming on Saturday. For today's practice, the Commanders were without Brandon Coleman, third-round pick of TCU, and Andrew Wiley, who both of those guys were listed as your left tackle and right tackle starters. So it was an offensive line that was missing a lot of guys. I think Sam Cosmi only practiced in like some parts of it. I don't know if he was practicing in the team drills or not, but heading into it, the offensive line did not look that healthy. Are you concerned about this health at all? I know it's kind of early in the preseason, but are you concerned?
We'll see long term because I think this is what it comes down to, right? We all should be concerned about the offensive line. I'm not saying code red. I'm not saying it's a level 9, level 10, level 8. It's a level 5. We don't have a great offensive line. It's not necessarily that great. And then going into training camp, going into this joint practice, like 3 of our mediocre offensive linemen are actually hurt, right? So it's like, okay, now going into the training camp, is that going to be going into this practice, we weren't going to expect anything super duper high. So I guess that's the concern there. The good concern is, I guess the good benefit from today is, it was a joint practice, 11 on 11, 7 on 7s as well. There wasn't a lot of heavy pressure, even contact with the quarterback. So that's good. Big picture wise, this was midway during the season. It would be a concern. We're playing the Eagles and we're down 3 offensive linemen. Then it's code red, right? But they weren't hitting the quarterback. Jayden came out healthy today, which is our number 1 goal for the rest of the season, honestly. So that's kind of, we have that there. But yeah, it is something to keep an eye on. I do think our offensive line is going to be average. I think they're going to have some lapses. But I think one takeaway from today is, yes, it seemed like it wasn't the most positive practice from the Washington end, but I'm happy it's happening on August 8th as opposed to September 8th or October 8th, right? We can learn from this and figure things out.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it, just Jane coming out healthy of this practice, and pretty much I think everyone that was already healthy stayed healthy throughout this practice, which is good because, the history of some of the turf. I know the Jets just got a new facility, so the turf isn't really a problem there, but just in New York in general, and then the rain and how what was it like? Is it Tropical Storm Debbie or Hurricane Debbie?
Hurricane Debbie, I believe.
Something like that. Something like that is coming through, and it kind of made the field all damp and stuff. So you're kind of a little bit concerned about some non-contact injuries. Nothing really happened there, which is good. But then also, since we were missing these guys like Wiley, Coleman, and Cosmi for part of it, you saw some players play positions on the offensive line that you wouldn't normally see. And especially some of the younger guys, Chris Paul, Mason Brooks, both of those guys got tackle reps.
I saw that.
Yeah, 2 players that have mostly been playing guard since they were brought here. Chris Paul, was it been 3 years ago, and then Mason Brooks last year. So both those guys got tackle reps, and then Trent Scott was kind of the first team right tackle. Shared that with Chris Paul, and then Cornelius Lucas had the left tackle reps for most of the day. It was a banged up offensive line, and it kind of showed. I would say with this offense, the offense did not have the best of days today, it sounded like. And again, in the run game, the offensive line couldn't really get any push, it sounded like. And especially with some of the backups in there going up against some of these Jets starting defensive linemen, you look at guys like Cornyn Williams. I mean, even Will McDonald, who was drafted in the first round a couple years ago. It was a struggle for this offensive line today.
Absolutely. And if, leading into this week, you could potentially, you saw the tea leaves coming, right? I don't know if you have the names in front of you. I don't have them in front of me, but throughout the week, they were adding offensive linemen from like the USFL and like, just walk-ons that were coming on the team. You could tell they were just kind of scrapping and putting things together. It was going to be a hodgepodge offensive line going into this practice. And that's kind of what what we saw. That's what transpired. And I think for me, I was listening to Brian Mitchell and JP Finley, doing my research for the show for today. And Brian Mitchell had a great quote, right? He said, going into the season, our concern is our offensive line and our defensive backs. And we saw that today. We saw the offensive line concern and defensive backs. It shouldn't be a surprise. This is kind of what we're going to expect. So, we are there is a concern right now, but the whole thought process is it's a marathon, not a journey. We shouldn't be peaking in August. We should be peaking week 1, week 2, week 4, week 5, kind of building up as the year goes on. So hopefully we look better against the Miami joint practice. Maybe our training, our actual preseason game on Saturday, we look pretty good. So just step one in a bad day.
Again, like you said, it's one day on August 8th of a season that's going to last 6 months. So it's still a long ways to go. Now, again, I think this was, I tweeted about it, but this was kind of like a reality check for some Washington fans. Just because you've been at, at least I've been at these practices for training camp the last couple of weeks, and especially throughout the last 2 weeks, as time went on, you had guys like Jayden Daniels looking a lot better, and it's weird because when you're practicing against your own players, when someone does something good, someone does something bad.
That's true.
So it's kind of like negating each other every time someone makes a big play on offense or defense. So you don't really have a feel on where the team itself is at. And even though the offense has kind of shown more promise and potential over this last week, this practice today was always going to be the big kind of factor or thing to look at as in terms of where this offense stands among a very good defense that the Jets have. And it showed today how good that defense was. So any other thoughts you have on this offense or any other players you want to spotlight?
I was just going to say that, you nailed it, right? So the team kind of practices in a vacuum. They kind of know what they're going to do. And Ashburn, it's like ideal circumstances, right? So Jayden is set up for success. It's a good idea. It is a good test. It's a good barometer to kind of see him go against a different team. So that was interesting to see it against the Jets. I think this is going to be the wave all year long. I think it's going to be up and down roller coaster for Daniels. Like, I'm actually really happy with him. Like, I was listening to another show earlier about how Drake May is really struggling in training camp. So I'm happy that we took Jayden Daniels. I feel like those 5 years of experience between Arizona State and LSU, I think that game experience will actually look good and transpire as he plays throughout the year. Even Sam Howell, like, I know everyone's kind of turned their back on him. There were times where there was like game situations, like, late, 2-minute drills, red zone offenses, throwing the ball out of bounds. Like, he wasn't always peaking as a quarterback, but you could tell with his experience, he made smart decisions. So I see Daniels doing that. I think he'll make smart decisions. I think he's going to have a high floor. There's going to be games where we're going to go get some really exotic blitz packages and teams that have good defenses where he's not going to look great. So he's a rookie. This is his first exposure against people got to consider his first exposure against true opponents in the NFL because he's going against his friends every day in training camp.
And like we kind of said, but he's been seeing that Washington defense for the last 3 or so weeks. You kind of get this. I mentioned it I made this analogy on a different podcast, but you kind of have that feeling where it's similar to playing pickup basketball with your friend, right? You kind of know their tendencies, their moves over time. That's what Daniels is seeing with that Commanders defense, which I mentioned it's kind of could be a reason why to his recent success on that offense, but today was going to be the main factor in terms of judging where he's at in his development so far. All right, moving on now to the defensive side of the ball. I think the big thing today well, first I want to shout out one guy who is kind of doing a great job reporting, especially recently, Linnell Willingham
Yeah, he is.
from 106.7. Love his work and stuff. So
Mhm.
I want to shout him out because he was where I was getting a lot of information from today.
Yeah.
Especially with the broadcast being very
Brief.
disappointing, I would say. It was
Yeah.
very brief and
Yeah.
disappointing. So
Yeah.
yeah. But he mentioned how the pass rush has really shown a lot of success, especially Dorrance Armstrong and Frankie Louvu as well. We were
Mm.
kind of curious to see where Louvu was going to stand, a guy who can play both off-ball linebacker and coverage, but can
Mhm.
also was one of the best linebackers rushing the passer as well. What did you like out of the pass rush and kind of the defense just overall today?
So I'll be honest with you, between the broken reports and the different,
Yeah,
I don't have concrete evidence to kind of speak to, but I'll speak like long
right.
term perspective, right? I
Yeah.
like our defense. I think Frankie Louvu is going to be one of our most impactful free agent signings. I'm really happy about him.
Mhm.
I think he's just going to
I was
be a
so
blitz
sad.
back. He's awesome. I don't know if you caught it, Mason, or any of our watchers caught it. We do a on Tuesdays we do a film breakdown like all 22, and we have
Mhm.
Mark Bullock and we have Nick Ackridge come on my show with me and Doug. And we did Frankie Louvu when we actually acquired him from Carolina, like, back like in March or whatever. And
Mhm.
dude, he's a maniac. Like, he does not care. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll link it to the show or attach it to whatever
Mhm.
you have.
Yeah,
He
I'll attach it.
basically blitz and he blows up offensive linemen. He blows up fullbacks. He doesn't care. And I think he's going to be a disruptor. Like, I think coming in, people were like, oh, Jamin Davis might be that Micah Parson piece that, Dan Quinn has coming over here in Washington. I think it's going to be Frankie Louvu. I think they're going to move him around. I think he's going to blitz up the middle, blitz on the edge. I think he's blitz on the side. I like him a lot. I
Right.
do like Johnny Newton to kind of keep the two, veterans, Deron Payne and John Allen fresh. So I like that as well. I think that's going to have a pretty, like, keeping all of them fresh and keeping Newton healthy is going to be a big impact for the year. And then Dorrance Armstrong, he like after I think he had maybe 6.5 sacks. I'm kind of talking off my head. I think he had 6.5 sacks last year, but with limited snaps. He was like a rotational
Mhm.
player. If you extrapolate that, maybe he's a 10-sack guy, maybe he's a 9-sack guy. And if you have that
Right.
in addition to these other guys, then I think we have a pretty good pass rush. And it's funny because for years it's kind of like I don't know. I feel like now our pass rush and our linebackers are our strength. It's never been that for many, many years
Yeah.
here in Washington. So it's interesting to
Mhm.
see that.
Yeah, you mentioned Dorrance Armstrong. He led. He didn't. Sorry, he didn't lead. He was second in the on the Cowboys last year in sacks. He had more sacks than DeMarcus Lawrence last year. So it's a piece that he's young. He's
Mm-hmm.
on kind of he was one of the guys that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn prioritized to signing a longer
Mm-hmm.
contract.
You
Because there's
did.
a lot of 1-year deals we signed. Guys like Bobby Wagner, Eckler was only 2 years. Armstrong and Louvu were both two players that they made sure to sign for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was like guaranteed money in all 3 years as well. So they have trust in these young players to make plays and grow over time as well. So I really like what I've seen out of both of them so far. I will say a lot of the pass rush success kind of came in the second half of practice, and
Mm-hmm.
that was also after the Jets were very careful with a lot of their starters today,
Mm-hmm.
especially their more injury prone starters because they took
Mm-hmm.
out Tyron Smith and they took out Morgan Moses today. Moses, former Washington
Yeah.
player, coming
Washington
back. I just
legend.
realized
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Washington
Absolutely.
legend right there. But they took out both of those halfway through practice because the rain kind of started pouring down more just to keep them safe. And then Fashanu was, I believe, like on third team reps or something.
Okay.
So he wasn't in there either. But that's when Armstrong and Louvu and some of the other guys were having a lot more success.
This is
So
without Aaron
again,
Rodgers too. Aaron
this
Rodgers,
is also yeah,
Aaron Rodgers' diagnosis is very fast. So basically, being
mhm,
like he just gets rid of the ball before he can even get to him. Him and Brady are like
right,
killers about that. So take it for
yeah,
what it's worth.
yeah. You gotta like the pass rush. I expect to be good this year, but again, the success today wasn't against the Jets' top unit. All right. Any other things? I'd say the secondary. Didn't really hear much about the secondary from the reports, like beyond that one person that we're about
Mhm.
to get to. But
Yeah.
anything in the secondary you want to talk about?
Just that I think Mikey Sanders is awesome, man. Like, he was my guy. Like, I always like if you go back to my tweets, I can kind of refer to them. I just love Mikey Sanders so because I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be the Terry McLaurin of our defense. And what I mean by that, he's going to be the outspoken leader. He's going to do the dirty work. He's going to be the one that fires everybody up. And I think he's
Mhm.
kind of flying under the radar right now, but people are slowly starting to kind of pick up on him. Going into the draft, I listened to Bucky. I don't know if you listen to the podcast, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. Mm-hmm. They were like really early on. Bucky Brooks was really high on Mikey Sanders still, just talking about how like he stuck around with Michigan when they were like 2-4 during that COVID year, and like he was their defensive captain, and he kind of rallied the troops, and like he switched positions mid-career at Michigan, which is instead of transferring, and basically built a reputation that way. And people just love him. He's tough. I watch his film as well. I think he's going to be an impact player in the secondary. And I just think, once things start coming around, Sanders still starts hitting the groove, and Jeremy Chin, I think, is a big improvement as well. I think our secondary is going to be pretty good, except for potentially, and we'll talk about it in a moment. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll so the outside, but right before we get to him, I just want to say the outside corner seems to be the major weakness. But beyond that, like the star position that Dan Quinn has mentioned a few times, the nickel position, even the safeties, I feel like are all going to be better than they were the year prior. Yeah. And stuff from Mikey Sanders still, you look at some of the other players in this secondary, like St. Juice, like Forbes, those guys are probably getting more of the talk than a guy like Sanders still, who's kind of, like you said, is a little bit under the radar now, I feel like, between Commanders fans. So I expect him to be I would just say it, I expect him to be one of the best players in our secondary during the preseason.
Like, I think the biggest addition.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. Yeah. You go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Bobby Wagner, he's a whole other category. I think leadership is going to step it up to change their whole. He's the pillar of our defense. I think Luvu and Sanders still they're the biggest offseason additions that we had. And I think like you and I that create content are really diving into this. Like we know who Mikey Sanders still is, but I think like week 1, week 2, week 3, when the casual fan that are fall fans, they're going to be, well, who the hell is this guy? They're going to basically like him a lot, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the secondary. Now we got to get to this one guy who probably was the big headliner throughout practice today, and maybe for good reason, but mostly for not good reason. It was the first round pick back in 2023, Emmanuel Forbes. Forbes had a busy day. It was a busy day with a lot of action for him today. I'm just gonna go through the timeline here. He started off with an interception early on in practice. Everyone was like, okay, is it this
turn in the corner?
Yeah, exactly. Turn in the corner. And then these videos start coming out. Garrett Wilson in 11-on-11 starts beating him a couple times. He gets pretty mad, gets into a fight with Breece Hall. And then I think the big telling one was the one that Linnell Willingham posted. I don't know if you saw, where he just
head down.
He just head down, gave up after in the middle of a play. That was probably the one. And then I don't know if you saw the video with the fan that
little
screamed, the little kid that was like, Garrett Wilson is going to cook you, Emmanuel Forbes. And then before Tyrod Taylor even throws the ball, he says, "I told you," and he beats him deep on like a 50-yard touchdown. So
it was that's a rough video because that's like such a pure like 10-year-old voice, and he knows it. He's like, I think at the 17-second mark, he's like, Emmanuel Forbes sucks. Like yells it while the ball's in the air. Like, oh my god, it breaks your heart to hear that. So it's tough. So I'll jump in it. We can kind of go back and forth. Forbes, I'm rooting for him, man. He's on the Commanders, so I want him to be successful. Let's start off with that, right? I was concerned when we got him. He wasn't one of my guys. Like there's some people that like really loved Emmanuel Forbes. Like my guy. I'm way before the draft. I loved Christian Gonzalez. I thought he was the guy. I wanted him to be. I thought he was going to be a top 10 pick. And once he started sliding down the board, I think this is our guy. We're going to get him. I'm really excited about it. My ranking was I like Christian Gonzalez. I think there's another. Who was the Seattle Witherspoon? Witherspoon was my number one cornerback. It was Witherspoon, and then it was Christian Gonzalez. And then it was actually I'm a Maryland guy, so I like Deonte Banks. And then I was looking at Porter and Forbes. I thought Porter was like a 30 to 40 selection, like an early second round pick. That's the way I viewed him. I was excited about him because once we got him and he's on our team, I'm going to buy in, right? So I was hoping he'd be a turnover machine. I was hoping that he was going to flip the field. I was willing to concede that he might not necessarily be that physical. But my concern with him is exactly what Linnell said. People are afraid to say this. Is he doesn't get his nose dirty, man, and he also gets down on himself. And I want him to turn that around. Yeah. It's a tough world, as you know, Mason. Like you go on Twitter, people are awful and mean, and if he's one to go on Twitter, he's not going to have that good mental state because people are crushing him all the time. And we don't have to get into mental health now, but it's not good for him to go on the internet.
Yeah,
right? Let's start off with that. No. It's not good for that.
It's not.
I'm concerned because he he's a liability right now, and I want him to turn it around because we should say there's people that are going to fight for him. He's not physical. He's not going to help out in run support. And for those of you that actually are really attuned to the team and follow him really closely, they benched him last year. And it wasn't necessarily because of his coverage. And his coverage was kind of subpar last year. Yeah. They benched him last year for his lack of effort in the run game and his lack of physicality. Like that's kind of was under the radar. He kind of like had to dig for that information, but it was true. So if he's not providing support in the run game and he's not physical, and then he's also getting psyched out, which is a very mental position at quarterback. Yeah. That's a big concern. So like, I am concerned. I like how he fought back, and as we both kind of picked up, as the practice went on, he got a little bit better and started to bounce back, and catch a groove a little bit. But I am like, my concern is where is he going to fit in? Like, if he is he going to? So he's not going to be cornerback one. I don't know if he's like. Our NFC East, we have some of the best wide receivers in the league in our division, right? We have A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb. People are sleeping on Malik Nabers. People want to hate on Malik Nabers because he's a giant. Malik Nabers was like my 1A with Marvin Harrison Jr. going out of the draft. I love Malik Nabers. Wow. He's an awesome. I love him. I thought he was like a great yard after catch guy. I thought he was really, really good. So he's coming in hungry and angry. So we have like those three wide receivers in our division. And if Forbes can't cover the number one corner, he's not going to put it slot because I think Sanderson's is better than him. So that's one thing there. Where is he going to fit? Is he going to be cornerback 2, or is he going to be like a third down and long type of package cornerback? We got to figure out where he's going to fit, and that's kind of the big picture with Forbes. So like, I hope he bounces back, but like, what he needs to do, because I don't ever think he's going to be a physical cornerback. He needs to kind of keep his head in the game and just kind of really perfect his craft on coverage. He needs to be a shutdown corner. That's what he needs to do. Like people are like, he can't be a shutdown corner. Then what's he going to be? He's not going to be a run supporter. He has to be a shutdown corner that turns the ball over. So that's kind of where I'm at. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I'll go back to the draft coming out. I had Gonzalez was my third ranked prospect in that entire class. He was my cornerback 1. He was my guy, and then Witherspoon after that. I believe I had Forbes with the second round grade. I think it was like a mid second round grade. Okay. But I had Porter above him, and I had who's the other guy? Banks. I had Banks above him too. So, yeah, I was a little bit surprised, but like based on all the reports coming out before the draft, I'm like, even with Gonzalez on the board, I know they're gonna pick Forbes. Like I knew it. Like deep down, I knew they were gonna pick Forbes, even if Gonzalez was on the board, and that's what ultimately happened. Ended up happening. Now, I'm a fan. I want him to succeed because if he succeeds, that means the team succeeds, and that means I'm happy. So there's that. And this team the year prior was one of the worst defenses in terms of creating turnovers. And Emmanuel Forbes was one of the best corners coming out of the draft that can create turnovers. So if you think about it that way, it seems like a good pick, even though the value might be a little high. Yeah. So I was excited for him last year, and then of course the year he has, and now to the training camp this year. I'm more concerned about his mental game compared to his physical game right now, because the physical stuff you can change. Like the coaches can change, coaches can make you better. Maybe he just didn't have the staff last year to
refine your craft. Better. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. It's now more of the mental game, and I feel like that can be harder to change, especially once you start going down, like you said, into that rabbit hole and stuff. And him giving up on plays today, that was the big thing, was him just giving up mid play and having his head down and stuff like that. Because especially with a young player like he is, you want to get to that quick. So then once his mental is back to like you're able to coach him again, competitive level. Then you can start bringing him back to the physical side of things, which again, I don't think he's going to be more like you said, like a run stopper, a physical tackler. So he's going to need to be a lockdown corner that he's got long arms, right? So he has the athleticism to have like the physical traits to swat passes away and stuff like that. But so I think right now it's more just the mental game with him, which is kind of like, it's worse than last year. I feel like once the news
is spiraling a little bit, right? Yeah, exactly.
But starts to get into your head, it can spiral very quickly downhill. And so I think that's what I'm concerned about with Forbes right now. And I mean, hopefully once we get back in Ashburn, hopefully he has a good game on Saturday, and then once he gets back in Ashburn next week, the coaches can get to him and hopefully, I don't know, like get better, because right now again, he wasn't listed as a starter on the unofficial depth chart heading into this week, so I expect to see a lot of him on Saturday, like because he wasn't listed as a starter, and the cornerback position is kind of beyond Benjamin St. Juste. I feel like he's going to be one of the starters. Beyond that, we don't really know who the second starter is going to be yet. And then we don't really know the depth beyond that, where things kind of stand with everyone else. So I expect to see a lot of Emmanuel Forbes on Saturday. And hopefully he can prove like me wrong and all of his haters wrong right now, because it's looking scary to try and believe in Emmanuel Forbes. I'm trying the hardest I can right now, but it's not looking great. So I'm hopeful that he can turn it around and have a good game on Saturday, because I think right now just some upwards momentum would be massive for him.
I was gonna say he needs to stack days. I think he needs to kind of get momentum, have a good day, have an interception, kind of get on a hot streak, and now kind of change everything for him. Because I think he is struggling right now. It's tough. Like, I went to training camp too, Mason, and like it's funny because I'm sitting around and like it's always interesting for me to hear what fans think. So there's fans just kind of talking bad about Forbes. He came by, he was signing autographs. He kind of walked right by me, and people are like, hey, Forbes, put on some weight. Keep it up. You need some more. People were saying like weird things about his weight. Like, imagine being a human being until you put on weight. This is awkward, right? Yeah. People are saying that. Then they're in his head in regard to that. So that's definitely one thing. And I mean, hopefully he can just turn it around. He needs to kind of catch a groove. Oh, and then the other thing, sorry, the depth charts. We all got to be careful with that, because from what I understand, the PR team put that together, not the coaches, and they were kind of grabbing that from observations of training camp. I think Forbes I think he is going to walk in. Like, I think before this training camp, he was the starting cornerback. Right. We'll see what happens like as over the next couple of weeks. I think that's where he's at right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused with that unofficial depth chart thing, because it's unofficial, but I still thought like Dan Quinn made it.
I think I was in a John Carmi's podcast, and John Carmi said that like the PR team did it. The PR team they were like they think that like they said Jayden Daniels, like that was the big one to kind of consider he's going to start. But I think it was like he gave a little bit of input, but it was more so like the PR team's observations from training camp. I think that's what I call it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess with the unofficial depth charts next week and the week after that too, those are also going to be part of the PR team, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's what I gathered. Yeah. So
okay. All right. Yeah. So more clarification on that. That's good. All right. So today's practice, that's pretty much what happened. It was raining. They didn't really have a lot of really intense sessions. I will say there wasn't really any fights beyond the one with Forbes and Breece Hall, which is a good thing, because we saw what happened between the Lions and the Giants earlier this week. Yeah, they were going at it.
Yeah.
But so no fights, which is good beyond some like the Forbes stuff, which you like to see. The team is focused. The team's ready to go for Saturday, which we can jump right into that. So going to Saturday's game, first preseason game against the New York Jets, Saturday at noon. It's in New York. Yeah, it's in New York. So I'm just gonna say, like, what are you looking forward to the most on Saturday?
So I'm curious to how much Jayden Daniels is going to play. Like, going into this game, I was thinking that he was going to get most of this practice and most of the hardcore work was going to be at training camp. But, I thought it was going to be behind the scenes. But with the rain and all the disconnect, are they going to play him more now, like in New York? And I guess maybe that's kind of a trial and error. If the offensive line is protecting him, they might leave him in longer. If the offensive line doesn't look great, maybe they might pull him out faster. So I guess that goes into my conversation or my observations, right? I want to see Jayden Daniels operate well. I want to see him get in and out of the huddle. I don't want to see any delay of games. I want to see him, calling protections to the lines, and I want to see him getting rid of the ball quickly. That's what I want to see from Jayden Daniels. Like, I think he's going to do. I'm confident. I'm actually excited to see this on Saturday because I think he's going to be successful. All the talk going into the draft was his pressure to sack ratio. He holds on to the ball too long and all that kind of stuff. I want to see if he gets rid of the ball quickly, if he can read a defense, and if he looks comfortable out there. And that's step one. I think the whole team, the whole season is dependent on Jayden Daniels. So that's number one for me. My number two would be the offensive line, right? So like we talked about this mix, like hodgepodge. Hopefully we start seeing Wiley. I don't think Wiley's going to play, but I'm guessing Coleman probably would, and maybe Cosby would as well, just to protect Daniels. So I want to see the offensive line, and like, is Brendan Coleman the real deal? We're seeing him in Washington, seeing him in Ashburn. He's blocking Clelin Ferrell, and he's blocking Dorrance Armstrong, and those guys are good players, but they're not like, they're not like those speed or rushers. They're more like a run stopper, and like they're like defensive ends as opposed to edge rushers. If that makes any sense, right? That's in the way I look at it, at least. So, does the offensive line look good? Or are they protecting Jayden? So 1 and 2 there, and then 3. I guess I'm looking for I'll do a 3 and a 3A. 3 in regard to concern. I want to see the defensive backs work pretty well. Like I want to see Forbes do pretty good, and I want to see some good coverage with St. Jude's. Like that's the important one. But 3A, the fun one, is I want to see Wagner and Luva running around and flying around. I don't know how much they're going to. Wagner probably won't play at all, to be honest with you.
I don't think so.
It'll be nice to see if Luva's out there, and I want to see Luva kind of run and do his thing. So those are my big 3 on Saturday.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to be looking forward to see Jayden Daniels the most. Like you said, the pressure to sack ratio stuff was kind of the big knack against him coming out of the draft, and something that definitely has favored historically success for quarterbacks in the NFL. So I'm hoping he gets the ball out quickly. We saw in practice today, or we heard about in practice today, that Daniels got better as the practice went on. Early on, he was kind of holding onto the ball more, was less decisive. But then as the practice went on, he became more decisive. And I mean, you can see it, or you heard about in real time, his development and stuff during today's practice. And so on Saturday, I wonder if he has a bad first drive where he's holding onto the ball too long. Maybe it's a 3 and out and he has 2 incompletions. Does that, if he gets a second and third drive, which if it's a 3 and out, I expect him to get a second and third drive.
I think so. I agree.
Yeah. So do we see more progression, more change? Is he progressing through his reads faster, stuff like that? So how he bounces back off adversity in this game is something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, because with young quarterbacks, and like even with like Forbes, right, bouncing back after adversity is something that Forbes has struggled with, and also what young quarterbacks struggle with sometimes as well. So I'm hoping he plays well. And then the offensive line is interesting because I really don't know what to expect. I don't expect Wiley to play, right? Coleman played practice some today. I think like he was.
I don't
stretching.
know. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you. He had a shoulder wrap earlier in the week. I didn't know if he practiced today. Yeah.
I mean, he was out there. He just wasn't out there in pads. So I think he was like doing his stretching and stuff like that. So I don't know if they're going to risk him, especially with a young guy like him as well, to practice to play while he's kind of recovering off of an injury. And then if they don't play Cosmi, because like Cosmi as well might have a nagging injury, and they don't want him to, I don't know, again, he's your best offensive lineman, right? So you don't want him to re-aggravate something. That's 3 of your 5 offensive linemen not going to be able to play. And we saw what happened today when you're missing 3 of your 5 offensive linemen. Daniels will be under a lot of pressure. You don't want him to be running around and then maybe take some hits, which he's vulnerable to in college. He took some pretty big hits. You don't want that happening in the first game. So the offensive line, and then kind of just the other rookies in general. Mikey Sanders still, I expect to have be a high floor. And then I want to see Luke McCaffrey a little bit, because he's been a guy that not a ton of people are talking about. When you're thinking about rookies, you think about Daniels and like Newton, but McCaffrey is going to have a pretty major role, because I don't know how much Terry's going to play. Like Terry might just play 1 drive and they might keep Jayden in for longer. So that'll be interesting to watch. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I think I agree with you. I think with Daniels, I think the amount of play that he'll get is dependent on how much he gets hit. I think like if he's struggling and he's like 0 for 4, I think they might like kind of like leave him in like another drive or 2 to kind of like work through it. But if he's getting hit and it's a concern for his health, they'll pull him out faster, if that makes any sense. And you're right. I think McCaffrey will be fun. I think he's an interesting, he's an interesting prospect. He's a McCaffrey. He's a NFL legacy, NFL gold. So we want to see how that goes. And Ben Sinnott, like I know we're all really excited about him, and like he was a highly rated tight end. I haven't heard much about him. Like everything I've heard about him has been more he's a good like a blocker, and he's kind of like he's physical, which is fine. I want to see him out there. Like the vision that I have for him is kind of like Chris Cooley. I think he's kind of like that true, like, put, hand in the mud, is an H-back, and be blocking. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about watching that too.
Yeah, Sinnott had a good catch. I think the team posted it over the middle of the field today.
Nice.
So I'm hoping that they definitely use more of him in the passing game because, he has some pretty crazy highlights at Kansas State with how athletic he is in the passing game. But, that was kind of the major stuff I'm looking at. Is there anything else in the game that you're kind of expecting to see, or any like if you had to give like a Jayden Daniels stat line that you'd be happy with, what would it be?
I think I'd be happy. I'd be happy if Jayden Daniels can come away with a scoring drive. That's what I want. If he comes away with two touchdown drives, the Twitter lines are going to blow up. Everything's going to go crazy. Just give me one. Just give me one. That's all I'm asking for. One nice drive. I'll take that. It looks pretty good. I'm curious if any of the veterans are going to play. I like Brian Robinson. I'm a big Brian Robinson guy. I want to see what Eckler has. I want to see who we have in the kickoff return game. That'll be kind of interesting to see too. Like I've heard Eckler's been getting back there. I've heard Sanderson's been back there. Forbes has been back there. I've heard a bunch of different things. So we'll see. That's another thing to come away with. But I guess for me, I just want to see my thing was I want to see a good operation from Jayden Daniels, and I want to see signs of life from our defense, because our defense, I think, was the biggest. I don't know how you feel. That was the biggest disappointment for me last year. I felt like the defense, they were I think they're going to be top 5 going into 2023, and they ended up being the last in the league and getting walked all over. And me being a season ticket holder, it was horrible to see. I want to see the effort and the energy there. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. One last thing I think for me is the kickoffs. I know we're going to see some tonight, and then we're going to see some more over the course of the next few days. But I'm excited for what Larry Izzo, Izzo's one of the best special teams coordinators in the league, who was let go of when Pete Carroll left Seattle. So I think Izzo was kind of like a sneaky good hire that some people are kind of forgetting about, especially with these new kickoff rules. I'm excited to see what he can do. I don't know how much he's going to reveal during these preseason games, but I'm excited to see what the creative stuff, because I do feel like with these new kickoffs, you can be more creative with how you kind of do things and sort things, because with the old kickoffs, it's kind of everyone just run downfield, go tackle the guy. But now it's depending on who you have back there. Do you want some more? I think you can have 2 people back there off the line or something. There's some crazy rules that I have to get into some more.
We got to figure it. I think we're all learning together. And I think it's a glorified run play. I think that's kind of my vision of it. It's a glorified run play, and I think it benefits you to have a guy that just one and up. I think the way it's going to work is the lines are going to shuffle, and there might be a little window. If someone can hit that window and go all the way up, that's how you. That's Rashid Shaheed. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, from the Saints.
Yeah, Rashid Shaheed.
I think he could basically. I think will be he's going to be awesome in that role. I think it's gonna be exciting. I think there's gonna be some touchdowns this year. I'm excited about that. It'll be fun.
I'm excited about it for sure. We've got a football game tonight. We've got a football game every day for the next 4 days.
Let's go. I'm saying that's the best time of the year, man. It's awesome.
Best time of the year. Where can people find your stuff and go follow you?
So Mason, man, thank you for having me. I always love talking to you. We should do it again during the season. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm George Carmi, actually Carmi21. You can find me on Twitter. So I'm always on there. You can follow my work there. I also do a podcast. I'm always on podcasts, but 3 times a week I'm doing them with Big Doug. We actually have Lake Lewis tomorrow. He's going to be on our show at 4:00, kind of recapping training camp. If you want to catch us, we're Monday, Wednesday, Friday around 4:00 is typically what we end up doing. Our season schedule is going to be Monday's going to be a game recap. Wednesday is going to be Opposition Wednesday. We're going to interview people from other teams. And then Friday is going to be reaching out to NFL media, local media, kind of catching up on them. So that's step 1. And then step 2, on the weekends, I believe Saturday or Sunday, I do an NFC East pod. And you guys should definitely jump on and make sure you check us out. It's pretty fun. It's called The Best of Enemies. It's me, a Cowboys creator, and a Eagles creator, and it's just fun because it's NFC East talk in the chat, whereas BS, and it's a lot of fun. So definitely check that out. It'd be cool.
Yeah, you guys have been doing some great stuff. Especially, I've been listening a lot to the Big Doug and Carmi show, so it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy a lot of you guys' content and stuff. So thanks for hopping on, and thanks for your time. That'll do it for today's episode. Oh, one more thing. Next episode will be after the game on Saturday. Next episode will be after the game on Saturday. That'll do it for today's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.